Enough. You've sat in this family pretending to be the perfect wife long enough. Tonight, we're finally moving forward.
The crystal wine glass shattered across the marble floor just as Margaret Brooks slammed her palm against the dining table. Enough, she snapped, pointing directly at Naomi Carter. You've sat in this family pretending to be the perfect wife long enough. Tonight, we're finally moving forward. Every conversation around the table died instantly. Naomi slowly placed her fork beside her plate and lifted her eyes. She didn't look frightened. She didn't even look surprised. Across from her, Ethan Brooks shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Margaret smiled proudly toward the entrance. Come in, dear. The dining room doors opened. A young woman in an elegant blue dress stepped inside carrying a bouquet of white lilies. She looked nervous but excited. Good evening, everyone. Margaret walked over and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. This, she announced loudly, is Lila Hayes, the woman who will finally make my son happy. Several relatives gasped. One elderly aunt nearly dropped her spoon. Lila smiled awkwardly. It's nice to meet everyone. Margaret looked straight at Naomi. I suppose you already know why she's here. Silence. Naomi simply folded her hands on the table. I have an idea. Margaret frowned. No tears. No screaming. No questions. Naomi smiled politely. I've learned people usually tell the truth when no one interrupts them. The room became strangely quiet. Ethan cleared his throat. Naomi. She looked at him calmly. Yes. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Margaret rolled her eyes. You see? This is exactly the problem. She's cold. She's like a business meeting dressed as a wife. Several cousins exchanged nervous looks. One uncle whispered under his breath. This isn't right. Margaret ignored him. Lila laughs. Lila smiles. Lila actually makes Ethan feel appreciated. Lila nodded carefully. I really do care about him. Naomi turned toward her. I'm sure you do. Her gentle voice caught everyone off guard. Lila blinked. You're not angry? Should I be angry with someone who only knows what she was told? Lila hesitated. What do you mean? Before Naomi could answer, Margaret interrupted. Don't start manipulating the girl. Naomi leaned back quietly. I'm only asking questions. She looked back at Lila. How long have you known Ethan? Almost a year. And when did he tell you his marriage was over? Lila looked toward Ethan. He said you two had been living separate lives. Naomi nodded. I see. He said the divorce was only delayed because of paperwork. Another nod. I understand. Lila seemed confused. Aren't you going to deny it? No. Everyone stared. Even Ethan looked puzzled. Naomi smiled faintly. I don't need to. Margaret laughed loudly. Look at her. She's already accepted defeat. Some relatives joined the laughter. Others remained silent. An older cousin named Richard quietly leaned toward his wife. Something feels off. His wife whispered back. I've never seen Naomi panic before. Meanwhile, Margaret raised her glass. To Ethan and Lila's future together. A few people reluctantly lifted their glasses. Naomi didn't. Instead, she looked directly at Lila again. May I ask you one more question? Lila nodded cautiously. Of course. Has Ethan ever brought you here before tonight? No. Has he ever shown you the property papers? Lila frowned. No. Has he ever explained who bought this house? Ethan suddenly interrupted. Naomi, that's enough. She turned toward him. I wasn't asking you. The room grew tense. Lila looked between them. I assumed. Naomi smiled gently. I know. Margaret slammed her hand on the table again. What difference does that make? Naomi looked at her calmly. None at the moment. Those 5 words somehow made Margaret even angrier. You always do this. Do what? You act like you're above everyone. Naomi's voice stayed soft. No. I simply prefer facts before conclusions. Margaret scoffed. Facts. Here's a fact. Ethan doesn't love you anymore. Naomi slowly turned toward Ethan. Is that true? Ethan couldn't meet her eyes. After several painful seconds. Yes. The room became painfully silent. Naomi lowered her gaze for a brief moment. When she looked up again, there wasn't a single tear. I appreciate your honesty. Ethan frowned. That's all you're going to say? What else should I say? I expected. You expected me to fight for someone who already made his decision. Ethan had no answer. Even Margaret seemed disappointed. She wanted drama. She wanted begging. Instead, Naomi reached for her glass of water and took a calm sip. Richard whispered again. This woman knows something. His wife nodded. I think so too. Margaret forced another smile. Since everyone understands the situation, Naomi, it would be best if you started making arrangements to leave. Naomi looked around the magnificent dining room. This house is certainly beautiful. Margaret grinned. It is. Naomi nodded once. It would be difficult to leave something you've cared for. Then don't make it harder. Naomi stood slowly. Everyone watched her. She adjusted the sleeve of her blazer. Then she looked at Lila. I truly hope you find happiness. Lila looked guilty. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I believe you. You do? Yes. Lila's eyes softened. Thank you. Margaret folded her arms. Well, at least she's finally accepting reality. Naomi smiled politely. Reality has an interesting way of introducing itself. Before anyone could ask what she meant, she walked toward the dining room doors. Just before leaving, she stopped. Without turning around, she spoke quietly. Ethan. He looked up. Yes. If you need anything from my office tomorrow, let my assistant know before noon. He frowned. Your office? Yes. You mean our office? Naomi paused for only a second. No. She continued walking. The doors closed behind her. Silence swallowed the room. Margaret shook her head, still acting important. But Richard couldn't stop thinking about Naomi's words. Neither could Ethan. Naomi sat inside her car without starting the engine. Her phone rang. The screen displayed one name. Daniel Pierce. She answered. Good evening, Daniel. I've just received something unusual. What happened? A law firm contacted my office this afternoon. Naomi closed her eyes briefly. I see. They requested preliminary information about marital assets. She smiled. So, they've finally decided. It appears so. Daniel's voice became serious. Would you like me to respond? Not yet. They're making assumptions. I know. They believe everything belongs to Ethan. Naomi let out a soft laugh. They've believed that for years. Daniel chuckled. I almost felt sorry for the attorney. You shouldn't. Why? Because facts don't care about assumptions. Daniel smiled. As always, you're remarkably calm. I'm not calm because I'm fearless. No. I'm calm because panic has never solved a single problem. There was silence. Then Daniel asked carefully, Are you hurting? For the first time that night. Naomi's voice became quieter. Yes. A tear finally rolled down her cheek. I loved him, Daniel. I know. I waited for him to remember who we were. I'm sorry. She wiped away the tear before another could fall. But love should never require someone to abandon their dignity. Daniel remained silent. Finally, he said, I'll have every document prepared. Thank you. One more thing. Yes. The title records. Naomi smiled again. Leave them exactly where they are. You don't want to warn them? No. They're walking toward the truth on their own. And when they discover it, Naomi looked through the windshield at the city lights. They'll understand why silence is sometimes louder than arguments. The next morning, Margaret was already making plans. She invited relatives for another family lunch. She laughed while showing Lila around the mansion. Next month this place will finally feel alive. Lila smiled uncertainly. It's beautiful. Margaret beamed. You'll redecorate however you like. Really? Of course. This will be your home. Neither woman noticed Richard standing quietly near the hallway. He frowned. Something still didn't make sense. Why had Naomi walked away looking, almost relieved? And why had she told Ethan to contact her assistant before entering her office? Richard pulled out his phone. There was only one person who could answer his questions. A longtime family lawyer he had known for years. As the call connected, he lowered his voice. I need you to check something for me. What is it? Richard glanced toward the grand staircase before speaking. I want to know exactly who owns this mansion. The lawyer's keyboard clicked in the background. A few seconds later, his voice suddenly changed. Richard, what? Are you sure you want the answer? Richard's heartbeat quickened. What did you find? If you're already wondering what that lawyer just discovered, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Richard gripped his phone tighter. What do you mean, am I sure I want the answer? Just tell me. The lawyer let out a slow breath. The property records are very clear. Richard swallowed. And the mansion isn't registered under Ethan Brooks. Richard frowned. Maybe it's under Margaret Brooks. No. Then whose name is on the title? A few seconds of silence followed. Finally, the lawyer answered. Naomi Carter. Richard's eyes widened. What? The mansion belongs exclusively to Naomi Carter. Richard looked toward the staircase where Margaret was proudly showing Lila around. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. There has to be a mistake. There isn't. What about after the marriage? The ownership never changed. Richard's voice dropped to almost a whisper. So, They've been celebrating inside Naomi's house. Exactly. Richard slowly ended the call. His mind raced. This family has no idea what they've done. Meanwhile, Margaret laughed as she opened the doors to the master bedroom. This will be yours soon. Lila smiled politely. It's beautiful. Margaret continued talking excitedly. We'll repaint the walls. Change the furniture. Maybe tear down that little office downstairs. Naomi spent too much time hiding in there. Lila hesitated. Shouldn't we wait until everything is official? Margaret waved her hand dismissively. Oh, don't worry about paperwork. But my son is getting divorced. That's all that matters. Lila forced a smile, but something about Naomi's calm face from the previous night refused to leave her mind. She remembered every word. Has Ethan ever shown you who bought this house? At the time, the question had seemed strange. Now, it echoed inside her head. Across town, Naomi walked into Carter Freight Group headquarters. Employees immediately greeted her. Good morning, Miss Carter. Morning, ma'am. Welcome back. She smiled warmly. Good morning, everyone. She wasn't pretending everything was fine. She simply refused to let heartbreak destroy everything else she had built. Inside the executive office, Daniel Pierce was already waiting with several folders spread across the conference table. I expected you'd come early. Naomi placed her handbag on the chair. I needed something familiar today. Daniel nodded. I understand. He pushed a folder toward her. I've gathered everything. She opened it. Property titles, business registrations, investment certificates, trust documents. Every single paper carried one name. Naomi Evelyn Carter. Daniel folded his arms. They're preparing for divorce. I know. They're expecting negotiations. I know. They're expecting half. Naomi couldn't help smiling. They're expecting fiction. Daniel chuckled. I've practiced law for 30 years. And I've never seen confidence built on so little information. Naomi closed the folder. Ethan stopped asking questions years ago. He assumed. Exactly. Daniel leaned forward. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why didn't you ever tell him? Naomi looked out the window. When we got married. She paused. He never cared how much I owned. Daniel listened quietly. He loved me because I laughed at his terrible jokes. A small smile crossed her face. He brought me coffee every morning. He waited outside my office just to drive me home. Daniel smiled. I remember. He never once asked how much I inherited. So you trusted him. I married a man. She sighed softly. Not an accountant. Daniel nodded slowly. But somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing me. Instead, he started seeing what everyone else told him I should be. Silence filled the office. Daniel finally spoke. Do you still love him? Naomi answered honestly. Part of me probably always will. But I love myself enough to know when someone no longer deserves my loyalty. At that same moment, Ethan sat inside a downtown law office. His attorney, Rebecca Collins, reviewed several documents. So, Ethan leaned back confidently. I assume this won't take long. Rebecca didn't answer immediately. Instead, she kept reading. Ethan smiled. My wife owns a company. Rebecca continued reading. She owns this house. Still no response. We have investments. Rebecca finally looked up. Mr. Brooks. Yes. I need to ask you something. Go ahead. How involved have you been in your family's finances? He laughed. I'm her husband. That wasn't my question. He frowned. I know enough. Rebecca folded her hands. Can you tell me which assets were acquired before your marriage? They're marital assets. Can you answer the question? They're ours. Rebecca sighed. Mr. Brooks. I don't understand why we're wasting time. She reached for another folder. I'm trying to avoid embarrassing you. His smile faded. What do you mean? Rebecca slowly slid a property record across the desk. I checked the land registry. Ethan glanced down, then looked again. His forehead creased. No. Rebecca quietly placed another document beside it. Company registration. Another. Investment trust. Another. Warehouse ownership. Another. Commercial fleet registration. Every document carried only one name. Naomi Evelyn Carter. Ethan stared without blinking. This. His voice cracked. This can't be right. Rebecca remained professional. It is. No. It is. He grabbed another document. No. Rebecca watched him carefully. The mansion belongs exclusively to Naomi. He shook his head. No. The logistics company was inherited years before your marriage. No. The commercial warehouses belong to a family trust controlled by Naomi. His breathing became heavier. No. Rebecca spoke gently. You don't own any of them. Silence. Absolute silence. Ethan's confidence disappeared. What do I own? Rebecca checked another file. Your personal savings. He stared blankly. Your vehicle. His shoulders slumped. A retirement account through your employer. He looked completely lost. And she hesitated. That's essentially everything. He whispered. I've lived in that house for 13 years. I know. I've introduced people to it. I know. I thought. Rebecca finished the sentence for him. You assumed. His eyes became glassy. He suddenly remembered Naomi's words. Before you divide something, make sure it belongs to you. It wasn't a threat. It was a fact. He covered his face with both hands. Oh my God. Rebecca remained silent. After nearly a minute, he finally looked up. Does my mother know? I don't believe so. He stood abruptly. I have to tell her. Margaret was choosing curtain samples with Lila when Ethan burst through the front door. His face was pale. His breathing was uneven. Margaret smiled. Perfect timing. He didn't smile back. We need to talk. Later. No. She frowned. What happened? He looked toward Lila. Can we have a minute? Lila immediately stood. I'll wait outside. As soon as she left, Margaret crossed her arms. What is it? Ethan struggled to find the words. The lawyer checked everything. And the house. What about it? It isn't mine. Margaret laughed. Obviously, it's yours after the divorce. No. She stopped laughing. What do you mean? It belongs to Naomi. Margaret blinked. So legally. She frowned. I don't understand. Everything belongs to Naomi. What do you mean everything? He pulled the documents from his briefcase. The mansion. She stared. The company. Another page. The warehouses. Another. The investment accounts. Margaret's smile slowly disappeared. No. He nodded weakly. My lawyer confirmed every document. Margaret grabbed the papers. This is ridiculous. She flipped through page after page. No. Another page. No. Another. No. She threw the documents onto the coffee table. There has to be a mistake. There isn't. Then we'll challenge it. We can't. Why not? Because they're all legal. Margaret paced angrily. She hid this from us. Ethan suddenly looked up. No. Margaret stopped. What? She never hid anything. What are you saying? I never asked. Those words hit Margaret like a slap. She remembered every time Naomi quietly excused herself from conversations about money. Every time she let Ethan make assumptions. Every time she chose silence instead of correction. Margaret whispered. She knew. Ethan nodded. She knew we'd eventually find out. Just then, Lila, standing outside the slightly open door, accidentally overheard everything. Her bouquet slipped from her hands. Flowers scattered across the floor. Her face turned completely pale. She whispered to herself. So he lied to me too? She stepped backward, unable to breathe. For the first time since meeting Ethan, she began questioning everything he had ever told her. If this revelation shocked you, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments. If you were in Lila's position, would you forgive Ethan or walk away immediately? Her breathing became shallow. Everything she had believed over the past year suddenly felt like a lie. She slowly pushed the door open. Margaret and Ethan turned at the same time. Lila, Ethan said. Her voice trembled. So everything I just heard is true? Neither of them answered. She looked directly at Ethan. You told me you bought this mansion. Silence. You told me your company was expanding. Silence again. You told me your wife was refusing to sign divorce papers because she wanted your money. A tear rolled down her cheek. Were any of those things true? Ethan lowered his head. No. Lila laughed bitterly. No. I was going to explain. When I found the right time. She shook her head. No, Ethan. She pointed toward the documents on the table. The truth didn't find the right time. Her voice became stronger. It found you. Margaret quickly stepped forward. Sweetheart, don't let this confuse you. Lila stared at her. Confuse me? Margaret forced a smile. The important thing is that Ethan loves you. Lila looked back at Ethan. Do you? He hesitated. That hesitation answered the question. She slowly wiped her tears away. I fell in love with the man you pretended to be. Without another word, she turned around and walked out of the mansion. Lila, Ethan shouted. She never looked back. The front door closed. The sound echoed through the enormous house. For the first time, the mansion felt empty. The following morning, Naomi arrived at the mediation office dressed in a simple cream-colored suit. She wasn't there to fight. She was there to finish a chapter of her life. Daniel Pierce greeted her with a reassuring smile. Everything is ready. Thank you. Minutes later, Ethan walked in. He looked nothing like the confident man from a week earlier. His shoulders were slumped. His eyes were tired. Margaret followed behind him, still wearing an expression that mixed anger with disbelief. The professional mediator welcomed everyone. Good morning. Everyone exchanged quiet greetings before taking their seats. The mediator opened the first file. Mr. Brooks, Mrs. Carter, today's purpose is to finalize the division of marital assets. Margaret leaned forward confidently. Exactly. The mediator adjusted his glasses. I've reviewed every document submitted. He looked toward Naomi. Mrs. Carter, ownership of the residence has been verified. Margaret smiled. Good. The residence is solely owned by Mrs. Carter. Margaret's smile disappeared. The mediator continued. Carter Freight Group was inherited before the marriage. Daniel nodded. Correct. The investment portfolio is held under Mrs. Carter's personal trust. Another confirmation. The commercial warehouses are likewise protected under inheritance law. The mediator closed the folder. Legally speaking, there are no jointly owned major assets requiring division. Silence filled the room. Margaret suddenly stood. This is unfair. The mediator calmly replied. Whether something feels fair or unfair does not change the legal documentation. She pointed at Naomi. She deceived my son. Naomi finally spoke. I never deceived anyone. You let us believe. I never asked you to believe anything. Margaret opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Naomi looked at Ethan. I never claimed your success as mine. She paused. I simply never claimed mine as yours. Ethan couldn't lift his head. The mediator handed him the final documents. Mr. Brooks, these are the agreed terms. His hands shook slightly as he signed. One signature, then another. Years of marriage ended in less than 2 minutes. When Naomi signed her copy, she quietly placed the pen back on the table. It was over. As everyone prepared to leave, Ethan suddenly spoke. Naomi. She turned around. Yes. His voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me? Daniel looked toward Naomi. The room became still. Naomi answered with complete honesty. You never asked. Ethan stared at her. I thought everything we built. She interrupted gently. What we built together was our marriage. A sad smile crossed her face. What I built before I met you belonged to my family. He closed his eyes. I was so certain. I know. I thought you needed me. I did. He looked up hopefully. She continued. But needing someone and being respected by them are two different things. Those words broke whatever hope he still had. Days later, Ethan packed the last of his belongings into the trunk of his aging sedan. He looked back one final time. The mansion stood exactly as it always had. Beautiful, peaceful, but it had never truly been his. Richard quietly walked over. I'm sorry. Ethan nodded. I should have listened to you. Richard sighed. I wasn't trying to embarrass you. I know. I just couldn't understand why Naomi looked so calm. Ethan smiled sadly. Because she already knew the truth. Richard placed a hand on his shoulder. Truth doesn't need to shout. Ethan drove away. He rented a modest one-bedroom apartment across town. For the first time in years, he learned how to live within the limits of his own income. It wasn't the apartment that hurt. It was knowing he had traded loyalty for illusion. Margaret's world changed just as quickly. Relatives stopped answering her invitations. Phone calls became shorter. Family gatherings continued without her. One afternoon, she visited her sister. I don't understand why everyone is treating me this way. Her sister sighed. Because you celebrated another woman's downfall before making sure she had actually fallen. Margaret looked away. I only wanted my son to be happy. No. Her sister's voice was firm. You wanted him to feel important. There was nothing Margaret could say. Deep down, she knew it was true. Several months passed. Carter Freight Group continued expanding. Naomi secured a major transportation contract that created hundreds of new jobs. Employees applauded as she addressed them. This success belongs to every one of you. One employee smiled. We're proud to work for you. Naomi smiled back. And I'm proud to work with all of you. She had lost a marriage, but she had not lost herself. A few weeks later, Naomi attended a national business conference. After finishing her presentation, someone approached her. Naomi. She turned around. It was Lila. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Finally, Lila smiled nervously. I wasn't sure you'd remember me. I remember. Lila looked down. I owe you an apology. You don't owe me anything. I do. Her eyes filled with tears. I believed lies because they sounded easier than asking questions. Naomi nodded gently. I understand. I never wanted to destroy your marriage. I know. I was manipulated. So was I. Lila looked surprised. You don't hate me? Naomi smiled softly. No. Lila let out a long breath. I've carried this guilt for months. You don't have to carry it anymore. The two women shook hands, not as rivals, but as two people who had survived the same deception. As Lila walked away, she turned back one last time. You taught me something. Naomi smiled. What was that? Never build your future on someone else's version of the truth. Naomi nodded. That's a lesson worth keeping. That evening, Naomi returned home. She stood on the balcony overlooking the city as the sun slowly disappeared beyond the skyline. The mansion was quiet, peaceful, not because she had won, but because she no longer had to defend what had always been hers. She thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the humiliation, the lies, the heartbreak. She realized something important. None of those things had defined her. Her character had. Money could be earned. Property could be inherited. Companies could grow. But integrity was something a person chose every single day. And that choice had carried her through the darkest chapter of her life. Sometimes the loudest people in the room believe they have all the power. Sometimes those who mock, boast, and celebrate too early think they've already won. But the truth has a way of arriving quietly. It doesn't rush. It doesn't argue. It simply waits until the right moment to reveal itself. And when it does, no amount of pride can stand against it. If this story reminded you that patience is strength and that truth always has its day, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us honestly, if you were Naomi, would you have revealed the truth from the beginning, or would you have stayed silent and let everyone discover it for themselves? Until next time, remember this: wealth can be lost, titles can disappear, and people may walk away. But character is the one treasure no one can ever take from you.